What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something that has always been very interesting to me because it's tied with some of my beliefs, Genesis 6, the giants, the Nephilim, and all that good stuff. Many of you that, if you're watching this channel, you probably ran across that subject by now. If you haven't, in a nutshell, who are the Nephilim? Nephilim are the offspring of fallen angels and women in Genesis 6, and that was one of the main reasons why God had to destroy the world, because human DNA was tainted and it was corrupt, and only 8 people survived. That's a take. There's different takes on it too, but the reason why it's interesting, this subject, is because the giants are tied to a lot of things, right? They're tied to all the other conspiracies or the things that are happening hidden, New World Order, the Masons, UFOs, and all this good stuff. It's really tied, in my opinion, to the giants and how the Smithsonian has been very, very ambitious to capture any findings of these giants and hide them away, because if we have giant bones, a man of 9 feet to 10 to 15 feet bones, then it kind of shuts down a lot of the evolutionary sciences, and it really just it sets free human beings from the sciences and them being the gatekeepers of information. But anyway, so the giants, according to let me see this, what's his name? I forgot. His name is, I'm not sure what his name is, but he has a YouTube channel called Understanding Conspiracy, and he's not too big, but I think he recently got a big spike because Eddie Bravo from the Joe Rogan podcast kind of mentioned him. But his take is that the Nephilim, the giants, the original giants, they look like clowns. And at first, when I heard about it, I thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. How can the Nephilim look like clowns? But having an open mind, I thought, okay, let me watch this guy's videos. I mean, he has a following. He must be saying something pretty good. So anyway, so I decided to check out his content, and lo and behold, it makes it interesting, and it does appear to be. I mean, I don't know what the leading experts, the Timothy Alberinos, the Quails that are experts in this subject would think about this. I have yet to find a video of what they think, but I'm going to play the video where he breaks it down in 15 minutes, the reason why he believes it. I'll be pausing it, giving you my reaction. But if you're interested in the subject of giants, you're going to want to listen to the whole thing. I'm not saying it's true. Even if it isn't true, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Giants were real. They look like clowns. I don't think it matters, but it kind of puts a new perspective on clowns and how we all think clowns are weird naturally, and kind of they don't even make sense if you think about it. But let's get to the video. Stick to the end. You're going to really want to hear everything this guy has to say when it comes to giants.
Talk about that a little.
Sure. So this is what's known throughout most cultures as a form of ancestor spirit worship. And this is how I've described it, and this is how it's well understood to be in mainly countries that have these very old folk traditions on every continent. It's kind of the oldest tradition usually, and it's not really rooted necessarily in religions. It's rooted in like an old verbal kind of ritual that tribes have done forever, and sometimes they get spiritualized by new religions that come along throughout history, and things get tagged along, but the roots are pretty much the same. So there's 2 ways it's done by most of these cultures. Either they dress like something in order to channel that thing and gain something from it for the tribe. Either a shaman is allocated to do this specifically within a tribe, or it's a free-for-all and anybody and everybody can all do it at once. It really doesn't matter. The end goal's the same. It's to channel the entity, and what they often dress like in all these different cultures, as I've shown in my series, is they have a very similar thread weaving through. And it's usually, they white the skin up with some kind of chalk or paint. They add red lines or patterns or polka dots to the skin. They put on some kind of red feathered headdress or anything to make the hair look dark or red, or some kind of multicolored A huge golden crown with many embellishments all over it is common as well. And they wear extremely colourful psychedelic clothing. Now, what I've pretty much described there is a clown by a Western standard, but they all have their own stylistic, aesthetical differences, culturally relevant to each individual area. So, they're talking about the same creatures they call ancestor spirits, because what they're referring to is not ancestors as we, with the English language, would consider that word to be. That's just kind of the only word we have for it, but it's not really what they mean. They don't mean grandma or granddad or your great uncles and aunties from the 1800s or something like that. They mean the ancient ones, the ones who built their culture and civilization that go way back. The ones who built everything that they consider their worldview or structure, the creators of their reality. The Nephilim, the ancient kings and rulers, the only spirits, as I explained earlier, that are actually on the other side for them to channel, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim from the biblical perspective. But they call them their ancestors. So like I said, they all dress in the same way. Like a clown in some level of, they all have their own levels of doing that. So that's one way of doing it. They dress like the thing to channel the thing. That is pretty much the most powerful, common used way of doing it. One really obvious example, which I think a lot of people will know about, is the Haiti, the Vodou culture in Haiti. They dress like something called Baron Samedi, and it's a particular Iwa or god of their pantheon, the father god or the son of the father god, Papa Legba. And it comes from an ancient African ancestor spirit worship culture, which went over to Haiti and then mixed with like French Catholicism and Freemasonry. So it became this very strange looking ritualistic thing where they specifically dress like these Iwas to channel them in order to gain strength, power and fortune. And the famous image is the cane top hat wearing skull faced man with a cigar and some whiskey. Now they drink the whiskey and smoke the cigar because that's what the demon enjoys having. That's their offering to them. And they do it with the sole intention to be possessed by the spirit of Baron Samedi. And they're open about it. They tell you that's what we're doing this for. But in quite a lot of cultures, they have this other thing. It's called apotropaic. That's the way you describe this practice. And it's the idea that you can dress like the thing to scare it away or to ward bad spirits off. You dress like them to confuse them or something like that. And the video I'm making currently goes into this heavily and shows a lot of these Eastern cultures who believe that they're doing this to scare away the spirits. I contend that's just stupid. That does not make any sense. Dressing like a demon in the physical realm is not going to scare away a demon in the physical realm. Give them some credit. They're not that stupid. Like we said earlier, they are thousands of years old. I do think there's a bit of a long con going on here. I think this is the idea that if we can convince these cultures that they have any form of control over us, then it keeps them thinking they have a level of power, therefore we can stick around, and we'll pretend to be scared away so then they can keep dressing like us and keep those channels open. I think that's really what's going on. And I've had a few messages where people from these cultures are getting offended at me saying these things. And it's not like I'm not trying to cause offense by saying this, but it just seems like obvious from my opinion, from my perspective, my research, because there are plenty of these other cultures who do dress like demons with the sole purpose to be possessed by them. They're not scaring anything away. So why would it suddenly scare them away just in a different culture when they're all representing in their dress the exact same creatures? Because you can see the aesthetical similarities across all of them. So getting back to the modern Western clown, you'll find that this comes out of a long tradition of performing clowns known as the Commedia dell'arte movement that came out of Italy. Now this performing troupe through the Middle Ages up into the 1600s, when it became popularized again, when theatre was allowed during that Renaissance period and that revival of artistry, you'll find they had these stock characters, and one of them was called Harlequin. Harlequin was picked up through the medieval period and added as a stock character by the 16th century. Because it represented the wild man of Europe. That's where they picked it up, because they were traveling from every country in Europe out of Italy, and they discovered they all have this ancient ancestor worship tradition where they dress up like a huge hairy animal monster thing with sharp teeth and a huge club. That's their version of ancestor spirit worship, of channeling or warding away the demons. That's their version. So they incorporated Harlequin based off the French version of the wild man called Helikins. and they added it into their troupe. And that's where we get Harlequin, the first proto-clownish demonic character. And then that through the 1700s to the 1800s, it progressed into the UK, and it became a part of the theatre of the United Kingdom through pantomime. And then, through the pantomime, we had the British clown, which was very different from the French clown, the Poirot, the basic white-garbed, black pom-poms, very sad figure. It was the British clown was more loutish and loud and like a bit of a drunk, bit of a fool, a clodhopper, you know, falling over all the time. The comedy came from him being foolish and silly. And by this point, Harlequin wasn't what he used to be. Harlequin used to be that character who was foolish and silly and evil and vicious and tricking people and being mischievous, you know. But by this point, he was kind of a boring character who was just always chasing after this woman called Columbine. So there was a void. The demon character needed to come back, and Clown took that place in the British pantomime. So there was a role switch. So Clown embodies the character of the original Harlequin, who is based off of the Wildman tradition of Europe, the Ancestor spirit worship tradition, who venerate the Nephilim. So in a historical sense, he is literally a representation of a demon. Like that just goes without me saying. That's what he embodies in the way he acts. That's who he's based off of historically throughout Europe. But there was a costume change done in the 1800s by a shady family called the Dibdins. So Charles Dibdin was a renowned member of the Leicestershire Lodge, number 2426 or something like that. He was actually a very famous musician of that time period. He was kind of one of the most famous media moguls of the time. He wrote so many plays and songs which were sung by the British sailors in the military. He kind of was equated with being the most important musician of the time because he kept the morale up from the wartime sailors and they sang his songs on the boats, and he kind of was equated with being a brilliant man who helped bring our country to victory type of person, you know. But he had a son by the same name called Charles Dibdin Jr., and he headed up the Sadler's Wells Theatre of that time, where the clown and this whole performance was happening. And he kind of hijacked the show. He came in and he said, you know, I'm going to change everything. And this has never been done before, by the way. This is a brand new thing in the 1800s. You know, for hundreds of years, the characters have dressed the same. They've always done the same things. Nothing's changed for centuries. But this son of a Freemason comes along and says, now I'm going to change all the costumes. And he basically changes the way the clown dresses, which used to be a boring, white, plain, nothing servant rag, into this psychedelic, monstrous-looking, fractal, multicolored thing with the crazy wigs. And it was such a bizarre change. There was no reason to do that necessarily. You know, it's a huge jump from boring.
So when he says this crazy demonic fractal thing, he's referring to when people go into the DMT realm, that they see these gesture-like beings, kind of like clowns, but it's fractal. It's, you know, it's another dimension. So the reason why there's, you know, these triangles on their faces and there's all these crazy colors on the clown is because they're representative of those spirits in that dimension, just so y'all don't get lost with the whole fractal thing.
In plain servant rags to extremely psychedelic, monstrous looking clown imagery with polka dots everywhere. It was just, where was this inspiration coming from? And you'll find, you know, he did a lot of traveling around India for a long time in that area, and so did his father, you know. And you know, the Freemasons are traveling men. That's what they do. They travel around and they pick up a thing or two and establish their lodges all over the place. And I think they would have witnessed a lot of this ancestor spirit worship in the Indic regions in Indonesia, let's say. And I think that's where he got the inspiration for his costumes, because if you look at the demons and their representations all throughout that region, they look identical to the very first clown costumes. They're wearing the same ritualistic garb and the similar face makeup. So it seems like this son of a Freemason inserted into the most popular artistic form of that time, the theatre, a demon on stage to be venerated. And from that day, that image of a clown was picked up by everyone else. It became the standard. And the demon was inserted into the media that day through an idol known as Joseph Grimaldi, who performed the clown brilliantly. People loved his character. They were obsessed with him. He was a rock star of the day, and he was constantly dressed like a demon. And people idolized him. So other clowns who wanted to be clowns, mimicked his dress and the way he looked. He's often equated with being the father of modern clowns, the guy who invented the clown. He wasn't, no. He was just a patsy used to don the costume designed by a son of a Freemason who mimicked it from these ancestor spirit cult worshippers in the East. And he just brought it onto the stage. So it can be traced historically, but it's not talked about. I've kind of uncovered all this, you know, and I'm trying to show historically something dodgy happened at this time period. There was no reason to change the costumes. It was well established for hundreds. People say he was trying to make his mark on the scene to establish himself in the world of theatre as somebody to take seriously or something, but no, it's too obvious, because there's a particular demon in Bali called the Kala Sungsang, and this is called that translates to upside down demon. And it's always depicted doing a handstand with its head turned up, looking directly at the person. Basically, like his head is the crotch, basically, staring at you with his feet in the air. And you find that a lot of artwork was made of Grimaldi wearing the clown costume, drawings and paintings of him in the exact same position, showing the exact same expression, looking the exact same way. So I think it was a literal...
That is bizarre.
...takeaway from Bali culture specifically, actually, just south of Indonesia, one of the islands there. And if you look at all the masks in that region of the demon masks, they look just like clowns with white faces, big red lips, but they have fangs sticking out, strange patterns on the face, you know. You can trace it exactly where they came from. And since that day, you know, from then on, circuses became a thing. The clown was adopted into the circus, and you find that all the the original circuses, were created by Freemasons. The Ringling Brothers and the P.T. Barnum and Bailey, you know, they were all Freemasons. All the brothers were Freemasons, and they even combined together to do a show together called The Greatest Show on Earth, you know. And it was called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Now, Freemasons are obsessed with King Solomon. They're obsessed with him. They want to keep building his temple, you know. They want to rebuild Solomon's temple in every way, shape, or form. A lot of the rituals revolve around him. They consider him maybe one of the first master masons, but it also goes all the way back to Nimrod as well. He was considered one of the first original masons, and it's very strange, but the two pillars, Yakin and Boaz, are associated with King Solomon's temple. And Yakin and Boaz, the two pillars, are said to be the pillars that survived after the flood. Gary Wayne talks about this. They were the pillars that had the knowledge which corrupted mankind, inscribed on them in language, in hieroglyphs created by Enoch the Bad from Cain's lineage. And it's just, that's all secret societies have to link back to this ancient antediluvian serpent worship, veneration of fallen angels and Nephilim gods, you know. And these Freemasons who have this background and this belief and veneration of demons created something called a circus. Well, if you look at a circus, it's just an analogy for a Freemason ritual. It's you have the ringmaster with the top hat. Within a lodge, the grand worshipful master of the lodge, the leader of the rituals, is the only one allowed to wear a black top hat, just like the ringleader in a circus. The ringleader orchestrates the clowns. Well, the grand worshipful master in a lodge orchestrates the ritual, which venerates and worships and channels demons. It's the same analogy, you know, but they've just transferred it into a huge grand spectacle and gets the public involved in the ritual. And circuses were a big deal back then. If the circus came to town, you went. What else were you going to do? There was no TV or any of this. You would go, you know, everyone else is going. And the circus itself is kind of like a psychedelic place, you know, full of fractal patterns and designs and spinning light wheels and carousels and all this, and just flashing lights everywhere. I think it is a tongue-in-cheek representation of this DMT realm where the clowns reside, where the jesters reside, where the demons are. They're trying to create physical representations of spiritual concepts, because that opens up channels, it opens up portals, it gives the demons the ability to manifest here physically through the channels that are created who wear the costume, or, you know, in a sense, create an environment, an entire environment like a circus, which would then manifest that spiritual concept into the physical and allow more channels to be open. It seems like that's what was going on. Today, circuses are old news. They're old-fashioned. They don't really happen anymore. We have TV now. The clowns are on television. The clowns are singing to us in the charts, you know. All the famous people dress like clowns, or they at least red the hair up, white the skin up, put bright red lipstick on, or some kind of crazy multicolored clothing on, or something, because they are doing the same thing. They are channeling.
Well, I have to say, Very, very interesting concept. This clown subject. Like I told you before, I was very skeptical of it. I thought, okay, let's hear this out, man. And you heard it. You heard a summary of it. There's a lot more in depth to it. You can go to Understanding Conspiracy if you want more information on this. But he actually made a point. I was thinking while watching this video. It's like, well, you know, circuses are not really controlled by the Freemasons. It's not a way to influence society or present an occult ceremonious ritual to the people without them even knowing it. Assuming this theory is true, and it kind of makes sense. Well, if you look towards our music industry, and many people believe, and I'm one of those that believe that most, if not all, of the music industry is hijacked by, you know, the occult Illuminati, the Satanists, whatever you want to call them. And you know, you look at their concerts and their rituals. I mean, they really are funky. Have you ever looked at them? I mean, paid attention. But I know a lot of people go innocently to some concerts, and you know, you enjoy the music, but usually the stage is just fantastical. It's not just lights and you know, sound. It's all these costumes and these people dancing and weird makeup and weird characters, and it's dragons and serpents and crazy costumes with red hair or yellow hair, and it's crazy stuff. Kind of makes you wonder, you know, it kind of makes you wonder. I definitely will take this theory, and I'm not going to 100% accept it, but I'm definitely going to consider it, and I'll be looking a little bit differently, you know, the concept of the clown now. Let me know what you think. Is this theory compelling to you? Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? You think it's insane? Leave me a comment. Thanks for stopping by, guys. You know, I appreciate it. Anyway, I gotta go. We'll be back soon.